Namaste friends, I hope you are doing fine. Have you tried connecting to a MySQL database through Excel using VBA? All applications follow a certain protocol which assists you to connect to a database and pull data from it. Let me demonstrate with an example. I have Microsoft Excel installed on my computer for all types of data processing activities. I also have MySQL installed which stores all my data. I would like to build a bridge between Excel and MySQL which will help both applications to communicate with each other. But this time, we will take a little detour through VBA, which means Microsoft Excel will communicate with VBA and VBA in turn will communicate with the database and vice versa. I am Subhojit and I welcome you back to our video tutorial series on connecting to a MySQL database using different applications. In this part, we will be focusing on connecting to MySQL using VBA, aka Visual Basic for Applications. This tutorial will require certain dynamic linked libraries to be enabled or referenced to in Excel. In Excel, I'll press Alt F11. Click on Tools, click on References, and under References, we'll have to select Visual Basic for Applications, Microsoft Excel 16.0 Object Library, OLE Automation, and Microsoft Office 16.0 Object Library. You will find this in this huge list over here. You will have to scroll down, put a check mark. Whichever options you check, they appear towards the top of the list. Once this is selected, click on OK. So now we are ready to go ahead and start coding in VBA. Let's dive in. I am on the Excel window and this is book 1. I'll save it as, select macro enabled workbook and click on save. So now this is saved as macro enabled workbook. I'll click on the developer tab. If developer tab is unavailable on Excel menu bar, you have to click on file, click on options, customize a ribbon, and in the right hand side under customize this ribbon, you will have to put a check mark against developer. Click on OK. The developer tab contains these icons, out of which one is Visual Basic Editor. You can use the keyboard shortcut Alt plus F11 to reach to the Visual Basic Editor. I'll click on it and I'm taken into this window which has a project pane and the properties pane. In the project pane, you have two objects, that is the sheet in the Excel workbook and the workbook itself, and these are the properties related to it when I click on them. Since we are not programming any of these, I'll right click on it and click on insert, and I would like to insert a module. In this module, I have to create a routine. The routine starts with the word sub and then the name of the routine. I have named it as connect to localhost, open parenthesis, close parenthesis, and I'll press enter. The Visual Basic Editor will add the corresponding ending line of that particular routine, which is end space sub. I will now try creating a connection string. A connection string is a set of connection parameters that will be used to connect to the SQL database. For that, I'll define a variable of the data type string. The word dim indicates it is a local variable which is active only between the sub and the end sub where it is declared. The parameters of a connection string are the driver, server, port, database, user, password, and option. All these parameters are separated by a semicolon, and the values are written after an equal to sign like this. In case of driver, it will be enclosed within curly braces, and this is the name of the ODBC driver that I will be using to connect to the MySQL database. I already have a video on my channel which explains how to download and install this. I'll leave a link in the description for your reference. Next, I will enter the server. In my case, it is equal to localhost. The port will be 3306. The database is the name of the schema. So we have trial underscore schema. User is the user ID that I use to log in to MySQL database. For most companies, we have a service ID instead of a personal ID because it is much better to use a service ID. In case a person leaves the company, the reports still have to work. Then we enter the password. And finally, I enter the option equal to 3. This is the default one which I use. We can go to the MySQL documentation. And over here, you will find connector ODBC connection parameters. If I scroll down, I find those parameters: server, database, port, password, user, and option. By default, the option available is 0 if I don't define it. The options that you can use is totally dependent on your requirement. You can go through this table 5.3 to check out all the options that are available. And if it suits your requirement, you can use them. I'll leave this link in the description for your reference. Next, I will define two objects, dim cn as object and dim rs as object. Cn will hold the connection and rs will hold the record set that we will retrieve using the connection cn. We already have seen string data type, integer data type, date data type, float, double, and so on. Object data type stores stuff like connections, record sets, etc. Once we define this, we will have to assign the type of connection it will hold. With this variable, we are telling the computer that I will be creating a connection to my SQL database. So you hold that information in this object variable. The type of connection that we will be creating is ADODB. So I'll set the variable cn equal to create object open parenthesis double quotes ADODB dot connection double quotes and close parenthesis. We will set the record set as create object, and in this case it will be ADODB dot record set. Close the parenthesis and enter. Next, we will open the connection by typing cn.open and give it the connection string, which is strcon that we have defined here. So it tells the computer that you have to open a connection using the connection string strcon and store it in this object that we have created. It is possible that a connection is not made properly and we will have to track it. For that, we need to define an exception handler over here. An exception handler has two cases. One, if it is successful, you do something. Two, if it is unsuccessful, you do something. So here I'll name the exception handler as done, colon, and over here I will type what it has to do. Connection what if it is not successful? So you show an error, MSG box, connection unsuccessful. I'll save this. I'll execute this. It shows connection successful. I'll click OK and it shows connection unsuccessful as well. In case of an unsuccessful connection, we would need the error number so as to troubleshoot it. So instead of giving a friendly message like this, I will give error.number. So this is VBA's way of telling that this is the error number that you are getting. I'll put an ampersand, double quotes, comma, space, double quotes, ampersand, and type error dot description. So the error number and the error description will be shown in the message instead of a friendly one. And we can use that error number and description to find out how to troubleshoot it from various forums or the documentation itself. If I test this piece of code now, it shows connection successful. And then it shows error.number as 0, comma, and there is no error. Logically speaking, this particular message should be shown only if there is an error. And to do that, I'll come to the top of the routine, press enter, and type on error go to show underscore error. Another thing we would need over here is after message box connection successful, you will have to exit this particular piece of code. So you just go ahead and exit this particular code so that this one is not called in. Let's test it. So now it will show connection successful. The moment I click on OK, it is exiting this piece of code and the next message does not appear. Let me just change the password to something else. And now if I execute this piece of code, it says this access denied for user trial 1 at host localhost. I'll click on OK. So it mentioned that there is some problem with the login. So I'll just change it and the connection is successful. I want to retrieve some data from the database after the connection is made. I have already defined the record set object and I will use this to ensure that I get some data from the database. But before that, I will have to define a string variable to hold the SQL query. So I'll come over here after the connection is made dim strSQL as string, and within this I will write my SQL query. Select. So this is my SQL statement. Select star from trial underscore schema dot trail underscore data. I'll have to execute this query on the database. For that, I will type rs, that is the record set dot open, and then I'll give the query which is stored in strSQL, comma. The connection to be used is cn. Enter. Now I have to check if the rows are fetched in the record set. Now, every record set has the first record and the last record. The first record is denoted as BOF, that is beginning of file, and the last record is denoted as EOF, that is end of file. I'll write a do while loop. Do while it is not rs dot end of file. So the loop will run from the first record till the last record. I'll press enter. I'll declare a variable called row. So somewhere around here. Dim row as long. Integer is a small number, long is a very large number. So for larger data sets, you can use long. You can also use double, which can store bigger numbers than long. So here, row equal to row plus 1, which means it will go to row 1, add 1 to the variable row, then it will move to row 2, it will add 1 to the variable row. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it will keep on increasing and storing it in this variable. I then have to move the cursor to the next row in the record set. Therefore, there is a property, there is a method called rs dot move next. So it moves to the next row in the record set, and I'll close this loop with the word loop. In the connection successful message, I will type a space, ampersand, and give the variable a row, ampersand, double quotes, space, rows fetched, top, and quotes. So basically what it will do now, it will connect using this connection string and then count the number of rows in the record set and then display this connection successful message with the number of rows it has fetched from the database. Let's test this. And it shows connection successful, 2307 rows fetched. I'll click on OK. In this workbench window, I have used the same SQL query. Select star from trial underscore schema dot trail underscore data, and the number of rows that have been fetched is 1000 because here it says limit to 1000 rows. Now I'll just click on this drop down and select don't limit, and the moment I execute this particular query, it gives me 2307 rows, which is given by the Visual Basic code. So the code is running properly as of now. Before we proceed, you can help me boost my confidence. Please like the video if you like the video. You can subscribe to the channel to get notified on new content. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Share the video with your friends and colleagues. We now have to close the connection after it is created, the data is fetched, and we get the counts. So here what we'll do is, after the loop, we will close the connection, set connection variable equal to nothing, set record set equal to nothing. In Power Query, the connection is created and closed automatically after fetching the data. In VBA, we'll have to do it manually. With this, we come to a concept of locking the records. What does locking the record mean? A database is used by multiple users. In my case, this is my personal laptop and I am the only user who is pushing the data into the database or pulling the data from it. But in real world scenario, in offices, you will find multiple people are trying to fetch data from the database. Also, there are many people who are trying to write something into the database, right? So there is user 1 and user 2. Let's take an example. User 1 is trying to update a record in the database and user 2 is trying to fetch records from the database. What happens when user 1 is trying to write a record? That particular record is locked in his or her name. When user 2 is trying to pull the data and it finds that the record which is locked by user 1 is a part of this data set, it might give an error or it might not pull the data from there. To overcome this, there is a locking type on the databases which we can specify in the code over here. After the connection, add lock optimistic. So this will ensure that the record which is being updated is locked. If we want to know more about this, we can check the Microsoft documentation on types of locks available. These are the lock types which you can use with a brief description of each and every one. So here, based on your requirement, you can specify the lock type in the code. Till now, we have not published the data present in the record set onto an Excel sheet. I'll resize the code window. And if we look at the sheet over here, the 2307 rows that are fetched, they are not written anywhere on the sheet in Excel. To do that, the simplest way is to type range A1 dot copy from record set and specify the record set name, which is RS. So this is the simplest way, but most of the times when you execute this, it doesn't get published over here. So there is another way of doing it. We already have this loop over here. So I'll press enter. And here I'll type range A ampersand row. Row is nothing but the row number which is there in the record set. Dot value equal to RS, that is the record set, and it has got a fields property wherein we can specify the column. So 0 is the first column, 1 is the second column, 2 is the third column, so on and so forth. So the code will look something like this. Go to column B and row number, whatever the row it is on. You take the data from column 1 for that particular row and paste it in the sheet. So this is how we do it. Let's execute this. 2307 rows are fetched and they are written onto this Excel sheet over here. So just let me click over here and you can see 2307 records are pasted onto the sheet. Now this gets us to a point wherein if I execute this again, this has to be cleared off from the sheet. Plus you see that there are no labels on top. which we will have to add. I will just enter one row over here and type in the labels. So I've added the column names over here, but this is row 1, whereas the code pastes the first record on row 1. We'll have to change this behavior. We have to come outside the do while loop, and we'll have to initiate the value row with 1, which means the value of 1 is already present in the variable row, and it will add 1 to it so that it becomes 2. The data will start getting published from row number 2. Since we added 1 over here, in the connection successful message, we will have to subtract 1 from it so that it gives me 2307 and not 2308. After initiating the variable, we have to clear this particular area in the worksheet so that the new data comes and gets pasted over here. After row 1, we will type these lines. So sheet 1, we are selecting it. If there are multiple sheets in your Excel workbook, you will have to ensure that the data is written in the correct sheet. Then we are selecting range A2. So the lines are doing something like this. Press Control Shift right arrow. It selects till the last row, and Control Shift down arrow. There you go. So these lines are doing the same thing, and the final line is selection.clearContents. So what I'll do is I'll retype this over here so that the selection goes away. And now I think this looks good. So let's test this. Great. So it got pasted from line number 2. Everything was cleared. And the new data set is pasted once again. There is one more way wherein you can write this particular line. And let me show that. So here what I'll do is I'll change the name of the module A_raw, which is the one which I created. I will insert another module. Copy everything from here into this. So this will become B_code_variant. And over here, instead of range A ampersand row, I'll type cells. First will be row, comma, 1. And let's see if this works. So I'm on B_code_variant. And it is still doing the job of pasting the data into that particular row and column. So this is how the code will look like after I change everything. So let's run this again. And it's working perfectly. This is how we connect to a MySQL database using VBA and pull the records onto a worksheet. This piece of code is very basic. The best part of programming is we can break this code into multiple parts. We can create a function out of this and reuse it in multiple files. But we'll do this in some other video tutorial. I hope this video added another tool to your data analysis toolkit. We will meet again in another exciting video very soon. Stay tuned. Bye bye and take care.